the woman from the dust, and the words that woke an entire land. Out in the wild west, where the sun scorches souls and the wind howls like a beast, Elias Kane thought his story had ended. He no longer believed in people, in love, or in God. Until one blazing afternoon, through a haze of red dust, a strange woman appeared and collapsed right at his doorstep. Before losing consciousness, she whispered, "Cowboy, I came to marry you." It sounded like madness, but it was the spark that set fate ablaze. That one sentence would drag Elias back to face the one thing he'd buried deepest, his past. Because sometimes, love doesn't knock on your door. It storms in like a sandstorm. The evening sun sank behind the red cliffs like a falling torch, setting fire to the ruined western sky. A dry wind swept through the desert, carrying the taste of salt and old sweat. On the far edge of that barren land lived Elias Kane, alone on a small ranch called Red Mesa, a place that was both his home and his prison. Once he had been a legend, a gunslinger, a hard-edged sheriff of Dry Creek. Now all he had left were a well, a rusted revolver on the wall, and dreams steeped in the smoke of gunpowder. His days passed like sand through an hourglass, steady, silent, and meaningless. Each dawn, he rose before the sun, hauled water for the horse, then sat on his porch staring into the endless desert. Some nights, when the wind whistled through the cracks, he could almost hear voices calling his name, his wife's, his little boy's, or maybe the echo of a conscience long buried beneath the dust of war. Red Mesa had been his refuge from memory, but after so long, forgetting had turned into a habit called loneliness. That evening, when the sun was bleeding out and the sand glowed like molten iron, Elias heard hooves in the distance. He squinted toward the horizon. A small, wavering figure moved across the desert. His hand went to his gun, an instinct that never truly left. No one passed through this country without a reason, and reasons out here were seldom good. As the rider drew closer, he saw it was a woman, thin, wrapped in a worn leather blanket. Her horse stumbled, collapsing just past the gate. The rider slid off, crumpling into the dirt like dry sand. Elias rushed over. She was light as ash in his arms, sunburned skin, cracked lips, a faint smear of blood down her sleeve. He carried her inside, laid her on the old bed where his son once slept. When he unwrapped the scarf from her face, he froze. Something about her features stirred a memory he couldn't place, a shadow from 20 years ago, flickering at the edge of thought. He fetched water from the well and let a few drops fall onto her lips. She stirred. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing eyes dark and deep as a desert well. Then, in a hoarse whisper that barely cut through the air, she said, "Cowboy, I came to marry you." The words hit Elias like a bullet. He stood frozen, heart pounding as if he were back under the crosshairs again. No one had ever said that to him, least of all a woman who'd just fallen from the storm. He stared at her until the oil lamp burned low. Outside, the wind howled through the well, echoing like the laughter of fate. Night settled over Red Mesa. Elias Kane sat by the stranger's bedside, feeling something stir inside him, a feeling he thought had died with the past. Fear, and a strange, uneasy curiosity. When dawn broke, Elias was still there. The woman's breathing was faint but steady. His cabin, once hollow with silence, now held a warmth he didn't know how to handle. As the second ray of sunlight slipped in, she stirred and slowly opened her eyes. Her gaze was calm and still, like the surface of a well at sunrise. Elias stood, poured water into a wooden cup, and handed it to her. She drank, her hands trembling but firm. "Thank you," she murmured, her voice heavy with an Apache accent. "My name is Naya." Elias nodded, but before he could speak, She went on, slow and deliberate, as if reciting an old vow. I don't want to stay idle. I can cook, tend horses, fix fences, just need a place to sleep. Elias studied her, a man trained to read truth in a heartbeat. She wasn't a drifter, nor was she a town woman. The way she held herself, straight-backed, eyes steady, proud, spoke of something rarer, dignity. There's no hiring out here, he said, voice dry as gravel. But if you need rest, stay a few days. Leave when you're ready. Naya nodded once, her expression unreadable. That day she worked quietly, hauling water, stacking firewood, sweeping years of dust from the kitchen. More than once Elias caught her standing by the well, one hand resting on the stone rim, head tilted, as if listening. When he asked, she only said softly, "Your well sings. This land is still alive." The words sent a strange chill through him, gentle, but haunting. That night, Elias sat on the porch with a glass of whiskey. The wind blew cold, crickets droned. Inside, Naya slept peacefully, too peacefully for a stranger. Then, in her sleep, she whispered again, barely audible through the door. "Cowboy, I came to marry you." Elias flinched, the glass nearly slipping from his hand. He'd heard every word, clear as gunfire. His pulse raced. He looked toward the dim room, at the woman who had fallen from the storm and spoken those impossible words. The wind swept through Red Mesa, carrying dust, the scent of burnt sage and something else, something ancient, familiar, unsettling. He didn't know why his heart was beating so fast. He only knew one thing. Fate had found him again. If it were you, whose side would you take? Oh, Elias Kane, the man trying to escape his past, but whom destiny won't release. B. Naya, the woman carrying a secret and a promise from 20 years ago. Or would you choose someone else? Leave a comment, and let me know you're still riding with this story. The sun climbed slowly over Red Mesa, spilling thick golden light across the ground. Elias Kane hauled up the old wooden bucket from the well, the pulley creaking like an old man's breath. Cold water rose from the deep, catching the reflection of a desert sky set ablaze. He poured a drink for the horse, then lingered by the well, that strange, familiar tug stirring in his chest again. In all these years, this well had never once run dry, not even when every other stream around had cracked and vanished. Naya stepped out from the porch, a cloth draped over her shoulder, her hair tied neatly back. She didn't speak. For a long moment, she just stood there, listening to the sound of water dripping back into the bucket. Then she placed her hand on the stone rim and closed her eyes. "Do you hear it?" she murmured. Elias frowned. "Hear what?" "The singing," she said, opening her eyes to meet his. "This well sings. It's not just water, Elias. It's the soul of the land. The Apache call it Apache, the river beneath the desert, where spirit and water become one." Elias let out a dry laugh, rough as wind scraping stone. "You planning to tell me ghost stories now? Out here all we've got is rock, sand, and silence." But Naya didn't answer. She simply lowered the bucket again and whispered, "Sometimes what you call silence is just a sound we've forgotten how to hear." Her words hung in the air, unsettling him more than he cared to admit. He was about to reply when a sudden roar came from below, the sound of water surging up. The well filled fast, frothing silver in the sunlight. Elias pulled the rope. The bucket came up brimming, cool and heavy. Water splashed over his hands, colder than usual. He glanced around. The land was parched for miles, 2 months without rain. The cattle were thin, the ground dead. Yet his well was overflowing, as if something deeper, something unseen, was feeding it from the belly of the earth. That night, Elias sat on the porch, moonlight glinting off the well's surface. He remembered Naya's words. The soul of the land. He shook his head, but the unease remained, crawling under his skin. By morning, when they went to draw more water, Naya stood silently by the well for a long while before saying, her voice low and steady, "If the man from the east ever learns about this water, the whole land will belong to him." Elias paused mid-pull. "Who are you talking about?" "Silas Monroe," she said. "A man with vengeance in his eyes and gold in his pockets. He doesn't seek water to drink, but to own. To him, thirst is power, and those who thirst must kneel." The name struck Elias like a gust of cold desert wind. It carried smoke and blood, ghosts from a war long gone. He gripped the rope tight, staring into the black depth below where the light didn't reach down. There might be a river, or maybe just a pit waiting to swallow men whole. He muttered, almost to himself, "Maybe you're right, Naya. Sometimes what's most dangerous ain't what's on the surface." That noon, the sun burned down on Red Mesa like a white-hot brand. Elias was mending a broken fence post when the sound of hooves echoed from afar. Heavy, measured, the rhythm of men used to command. He straightened and squinted toward the shimmering horizon. 3 riders approached, coats long, faces shadowed with dust, all except the one in front, whose black hat and clean boots spoke of power, not travel. When they halted at the gate, the lead rider spoke, his voice smooth as bourbon but colder than a blade. "Mr. Kane, name's Silas Monroe. I represent the Arizona and Western Railroad Company. I'm here to talk business." Elias set down his hammer, wiped the sweat from his brow. "This land's not for sale." Silas smiled, a thin, joyless curl of the lips. "Now don't be hasty. I'm authorized to extend the line through this territory. With your well sitting right where it does, Red Mesa could serve as the perfect stop for our trains. I'll pay double the market price. Cash." Elias met his gaze. "The company wants the line, or you do, Monroe." A hot wind kicked up from the desert, flaring Silas's coat. A silver ring flashed on his hand. A snake coiled around a horseshoe. From the porch, Naya froze. Her breath caught in her throat. That symbol, she knew it. She'd seen it branded on cages, on whips, on skin. Snake brand. The slave runners who'd murdered her mother, who'd locked her in an iron crate under the burning sun when she was 12. Her pulse hammered, but she masked it quickly, bowing her head like a servant who'd seen too much. Silas's voice cut through the air again, smooth, metallic. "I know your past, Kane. 20 years ago, my brother, Marshall Monroe, died by your hand. But I'm not here for revenge. Not if business comes first." Elias narrowed his eyes. "Is that so? Because your tone don't sound much like business." The air thickened, tense, brittle as glass. 2 men stared at each other, the silence stretching longer than the wind that swept across the sand. At last, Silas chuckled softly and turned his horse. "Keep your land, Kane. But when the railroad comes, remember, metal always wins over dirt." He rode off, his men following, their shapes swallowed by the red dust. Elias watched them disappear, his eyes like cooled steel. Behind him, Naya stood in the doorway, fists clenched until blood beaded at her palms. She knew something Elias didn't. The serpent had returned, and with it, the ghosts of the nights she thought she'd buried forever. "If it were you, whose side would you take, Monsieur?" Elias Kane. The man haunted by the past, but too proud to yield. "B. Naya." The woman carrying blood debt and silence behind her calm eyes. "Or would you choose someone else? Leave a comment, and let me know you're still riding with this story." Red Mesa burned under the dying sun, its light thick and red as spilled blood across the rocks. Elias Kane was trimming the reins on his horse when he heard the distant rhythm of hooves. He looked up, squinting into the heat. An old man rode toward him, back still straight despite the years. Judge Callahan. The man had ridden beside Elias through both war and frontier law, and he carried both in his bones. When the horse stopped at the porch, Callahan dismounted, peeling off his gloves. His eyes were stern, but there was kindness buried deep behind them. "I heard Silas Monroe paid you a visit," he said. "He's not just talking, Elias. Down in town he's buying judges and clerks. He means to claim your well, legally." Elias's shoulders tightened like drawn wire. "Figured he wouldn't stop till he got what he came for." "Or until you're dead," Callahan replied flatly. Then his tone softened. "But there's a way to make it harder for him, at least on paper." Elias frowned. "What kind of courtroom trick are you playing at now?" The old judge sank into a wooden chair, laid his hat on the table, and spoke in that low, gravelly drawl. "Under the land laws of this territory, a registered homestead that belongs to a family, husband, wife, joint property, gets stronger protection than land owned by a single man. If Red Mesa bears the name of a family, no court will dare hand it over without a long fight." Elias let out a short, humorless laugh. "You're saying I ought to get married? Now?" Callahan studied him. "I know it sounds damn foolish, but out here, foolishness might be the only way to stay alive. That woman, Naya, she's steady, sharp-eyed. If she agrees, you'd have the best shield the law can offer." Silence filled the room. Outside, the desert wind scraped sand against the shutters with a long, hollow hiss. Elias stood by the table, eyes fixed on the well beyond the window. "Marriage for the sake of law," he muttered. "Sounds like one of God's bad jokes." Just then, Naya appeared at the doorway. She hadn't meant to listen, but her calm face told them she had heard enough. "If it keeps Red Mesa standing," she said quietly, "then I'll agree." Elias turned sharply, surprise and protest flashing in his eyes. "You don't have to. I'm not here for love," she cut in, her voice clean and hard as steel. "I'm here to belong somewhere, and I've found that here. If a piece of paper keeps this land safe, then I'll sign it." Callahan looked between them. His weathered face caught between amusement and pity. "Then we have ourselves a contract. A marriage not to bind hearts, but to protect the land." Elias was silent for a long time. Finally, he nodded once. "All right. If that's what it takes to hold Red Mesa, we'll do it." Outside, the wind rose again, sweeping dust across the yard. Something was changing, not just in the fate of the land, but between two souls about to enter a marriage without love, and with destiny watching. That evening, the desert wind carried the scent of dust and sunburned sage. On the wooden porch of Red Mesa, a plain white cloth served as a makeshift altar. No flowers, no music, only the steady creak of the well's pulley, the land itself bearing silent witness. Elias Kane stood tall, his old shirt brushed clean of grit. Across from him, Naya wore a simple earth-colored dress, her dark eyes deep as dusk itself. Judge Callahan opened his worn leather book, voice rasped with age and tobacco. "We gather here to witness a union, not just between two people, but between man and the land he calls home. Elias Kane, do you agree to stand with Naya in hardship and in calm?" Elias nodded once, voice steady and low. "I do." Callahan turned to her. "And you, Naya?" She met his eyes without hesitation. "I do." The wind howled through the rafters like a spirit answering back. Sheriff Dalton, serving as witness, stood silent, one hand on his gun, the other gripping his hat. Two ranchers from Dry Creek looked on, faces caught between curiosity and respect. No one spoke. They simply watched. a rare sight in these parts. A marriage born not of love, but survival. When Callahan unfolded the marriage license, Elias signed first, his handwriting straight and strong, just like him. Then came Naya. She took the pen, her hand trembling slightly, not from fear, but from memory. Under the burning sky, the pen scratched the paper with graceful curves, strokes shaped by a hand long forgotten by peace. Callahan leaned closer to read, and froze. His brows knit, eyes narrowing as if he'd just seen a ghost. "You signed Naya?" he asked slowly. She looked up, calm as still water. "Yes." A heavy pause. Then Callahan opened his old satchel and pulled out a faded document, a yellowed affidavit he'd kept from a case that never found justice. The signature at the bottom, trembling, uneven, matched hers perfectly. His breath hitched. "Good Lord, you're the missing Apache child from the Verde River massacre. The Monroe family staged that attack." Elias's eyes widened. Naya bowed her head, her voice soft as wind through dry grass. "I know, and I've come back to finish what they began." Silence swallowed the yard whole. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Callahan folded the paper slowly, his eyes full of pity and respect. Elias looked at Naya for a long, long moment, and now he understood. That quiet strength, that fire buried deep behind her calm. She wasn't just a woman seeking shelter. She was a survivor, carrying a nation's grief and her own vow of vengeance. "If it were you, whose side would you take, Emma?" Elias Kane, the man who unwittingly married a living witness of blood and history. B. Naya, the woman who accepted a hollow marriage to reclaim justice for her people. Or would you choose someone else? Leave a comment, and let me know you're still riding with this story. Night fell over Red Mesa like a heavy shroud. Wind howled through the cracks as Elias Kane lit the oil lamp, its glow cutting across his worn face. Across the room, Naya slipped out of her torn cloak. In the lamplight, Elias caught sight of a scar burned deep into her shoulder, a jagged horseshoe brand. His breath stopped. Years ago, he'd seen that mark on captives taken by Monroe's men. "You," his voice rasped. "That scar. Was it Monroe?" Naya turned slowly, eyes dark and unflinching. She dressed, then sat across from him. The silence crackled before she finally spoke. "Yes, not Marshall. Silas. I was 10 when he took me from my mother's tribe. He called us property, branded us so we wouldn't get lost." Her words came steady, but carried the weight of ashes. "They taught me English, how to pour whiskey, how to smile, how to serve. Some nights we sang while they buried our people in the sand. I remembered every scream." Her gaze shone wetly in the dim light. "One night the camp was attacked. I ran. No one followed. I walked west until I found this place. And I lived, one day at a time." Elias's fists clenched. His throat burned with old guilt. He saw not a victim, but a survivor who carried fire through darkness. "You never told me." She met his eyes, sharp and calm. "What would you have done? Pity me? I don't need that. I need you to understand. I'm not here to hide. I'm here to finish what he started." Elias bowed his head, rage against Silas Monroe hardening into a vow. No one else would ever bear that brand. Dawn broke gray and heavy. Elias sat at the table, maps spread before him, Judge Callahan at his side. Farmers worked outside, hammering posts against the desert wind. "You've got the valley behind you," Callahan said. "Silas may buy the law, but truth hits harder than gold." Elias nodded, scanning the worn map again. Then he froze. Faint lines ran beneath Red Mesa, cutting toward the well. Beside them, faded words, subterranean flow, possible river vein. His pulse quickened. He remembered Naya's words at the well. The well sings. It's the soul of the land. He'd thought it superstition. Now it was proof. "Naya," he called. She entered, hair loose, eyes questioning. He pointed to the fracture. "This isn't just a well. There's a river under Red Mesa, like the Apache legend you told me." Naya bent close, tracing the ink with trembling fingers. In her tongue she whispered, "Atahe, the river of souls." Then she looked up, eyes wide with awe and dread. "It's real," she breathed. "That's what Silas wants. Not the land, the river. Control the river, and he controls the whole Southwest." Elias's jaw set, hard. Now he understood. Silas Monroe's war wasn't for soil or pride. It was for power, enough to turn dust into gold. "If he gets it," Elias said, "every man, woman, and child here will be drinking from his hand." Callahan's expression hardened. "Then we don't let that happen. Tomorrow in court, we show him. Not everything in this world's for sale." Elias looked out through the open window. Farmers were still working in the heat. Men and women who had little, but who stood tall. Honest people. And for the first time in years, he felt something rise inside him. Not anger, not fear. Faith. He turned back to Naya. "We fight," he said. "Not just for the well, but for this land. For everyone who came before." Naya smiled, eyes glimmering like embers. "And for the truth, because this land never forgets." "If it were you, whose side would you take?" Elias Kane, the man who dares to defy power and protect the land he loves. Be Naya, the woman who believes the soul of the earth still sings beneath their feet. Or would you choose another? Leave a comment, and let me know you're still riding with this story. Noon in Dry Creek came heavy and breathless. The courthouse square swarmed with townsfolk, waiting to see Elias Kane, once sheriff, stand against Silas Monroe, the railroad baron rich enough to buy the law. Elias climbed the steps, his coat streaked with desert grit. At his side walked Naya, calm as stone, eyes steady. Behind them came Judge Callahan and a few Red Mesa farmers, plain folk, sunburned and silent. Inside, Judge McCulloch presided, cold-eyed behind his bench. Silas Monroe stood polished in black, silver buttons gleaming. His voice slid like oil as he presented papers. The Arizona and Western Railroad claims the Red Mesa well, purchased in 1878. And this woman with Kane, who is she? A drifter, no past, no proof. Can such a marriage be trusted? Whispers rippled. Elias rose, shoulders squared. My deeds are stamped by the land office, witnessed by Judge Callahan. Red Mesa is mine, built with my own hands, guarded with my blood. And Naya is my wife. Together we turned dust into home. McCulloch gestured. Mrs. Kane? Naya stepped forward, sunlight framing her. Her voice carried the cadence of two worlds. Your laws say I don't belong, but this land chose me before any of you came. We haven't taken. We live, we plant, we give thanks. Her words struck the room silent. For the first time, Silas shrank beneath a truth money could not buy. Bang! The gavel thundered. This court recognizes Elias and Naya Kane as rightful owners of Red Mesa. The railroad's claim is denied. Cheers erupted. Farmers clapped and hollered. Elias stood stunned, then exhaled like a man freed. Naya bowed, her eyes gleaming with pride and caution. Silas did not celebrate. Rising, he leaned close to Elias, voice like smoke. The law is a thin curtain. I'll burn it, and your house with it. Elias's reply was iron. Try it. This land won't leave enough room to bury you. Silas left, his shadow lingering. That evening, Red Mesa blazed with firelight and music. Farmers feasted, laughter echoing across the desert. On the porch, Elias whispered, "We won." Naya, leaning beside him, answered softly, "Yes, but it isn't over." Miles away, torches lit a camp of hired guns. Rifles and dynamite were loaded under the black sky. Their leader, scarred and silver-haired, studied a map. "Red Mesa," he said. "We ride before dawn." The firelight revealed his face. One Naya would know. 19 years ago, this man had saved her from Silas Monroe's slave camp, swearing never to walk the blood road again. But Monroe's gold had bought his oath. Now, he rode to kill the woman he once saved. If it were you, whose side would you take? A. Elias Kane, the man who won the law but now faces the war beyond it. B. Naya, the woman who can already feel the storm returning. Or would you choose another? Leave a comment. And let me know you're still riding with this story. Night fell over Red Mesa thick as oil. The moon was buried behind clouds, and the desert breathed the scent of gunpowder and storm. Elias Kane sat on the porch, listening to the wind whistle through the cacti, when the old hound by the gate let out a strange, broken howl. He rose instantly, instincts older than thought stirring in his gut. Before his hand could reach the rifle, the sound came. Hooves pounding hard from the north. Then, fire. Bursts of orange tearing through the dark. Silas Monroe's hired guns had arrived. A dozen, maybe more, moving like shadows through the sand. Black scarves, flintlocks, torches. "Burn the camp!" someone shouted. In moments, the tents around the well erupted in flames. The desert turned crimson, and hell came roaring back to life. Elias stormed into the yard, voice booming over the chaos. "Arm yourselves! Protect the well!" The people of Red Mesa, farmers, blacksmiths, women with calloused hands, formed a line gripping whatever weapons they had. They didn't fight for gold. They fought for the dirt that had fed them, for the breath that tied them to the land. Through smoke and dust, Naya crawled between barrels, Winchester clutched tight. Her eyes blazed like obsidian fire. She dropped 2 men near the stables, then rolled away as a bullet screamed past her ear. The wind howled, whipping smoke and cinders across the yard. The air thick with the stench of powder and burning hide. Across the field, Elias fought near the well, trading shots with a crew carrying dynamite. He hit the one holding the fuse. The man spun, fell, but another took his place. There were too many, coming in waves out of the dark. Naya crept closer to the well, where a tall figure barked orders, signaling men to plant the explosives. She raised her rifle, ready to shoot, and then froze. The firelight caught his face, the scar slicing across his left cheek. She knew it instantly. It was the man who had opened her cage 19 years ago, the one who had given her a chance at life. Her hands trembled, but he turned, rifle raised, pointing straight at the song. Reflex took over. She pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked the night. The man staggered, eyes wide. "I didn't know it was you," he whispered, voice breaking, and fell. Naya sank to her knees beside him, tears mixing with dust and blood. Elias ran toward her, grabbed her arm. "Move! The dynamite!" The explosion hit like thunder. The ground split open, hurling smoke, fire, and sand into the sky. The shockwave threw everyone to the dirt. Elias shielded Naya with his body as debris rained down around them. When the dust settled, Red Mesa was no longer the same. The well had ruptured, a black crater yawning where it once stood. And then, from the depths of the earth, water burst upward, silver beneath the moon now breaking through the clouds. It rose like a fountain from heaven itself, spilling down in a shower of light. No one spoke. The only sound was the rushing of the water, ancient, eternal, alive. Naya stood in the middle of the wreckage, surrounded by mud and blood, staring at the water flowing freely across the land. Tears glistened in her eyes as she whispered, "Atahe, the river of souls has returned." Elias gripped her hand, their fingers streaked with blood and ash, and in that burning night, they both understood. Red Mesa had been reborn. The past, no matter how bloody, had given birth to something sacred. Dawn came gold and blazing, washing over the smoke and ruin. The ground was scorched, the fences gone, yet from the cracked mouth of the well poured a roaring surge of white water, wild, clean, unstoppable. It gushed through the ashes, glimmering like liquid light, as the people of Red Mesa gathered around, shouting, laughing, crying. Elias Kane stood ankle-deep in the muddy earth, his shirt torn, his face blackened with soot, and yet his eyes were full of wonder. The underground river was real. The legend was truth. The water splashed up, cool against his skin, washing away the dust of years. Beside him, Naya knelt, her hand dipping into the stream that danced over burned stones. She lifted her gaze to the sky, eyes shining like the dawn itself. "Do you see?" she said softly, voice trembling. "The earth just paid its debt." Far off, Silas Monroe stumbled through the sand. His fine black suit was torn and smoking, his hands filthy with ash. As the first rays of sun caught him, he fell to his knees by the dunes, staring wide-eyed at the river he had tried to steal, the one now flowing for the very people he had despised. A gust of wind swept across the plain, lifting the dust, erasing his footprints. The desert was already burying him. Elias walked to Naya's side. They stood together, hand in hand, as water spread over the land. He looked at her, the woman fate had brought to his door when he had no faith left in anything. Over the murmur of the water, his voice came low, rough with emotion. 20 years ago, I saved a little girl. Thought I was the one doing the right thing. Turns out, she's the one who saved me. Naya turned, sunlight spilling across her face. Her smile was soft, luminous. "The earth never forgets the hands that sow," she whispered, "and water always finds its way back to those who deserve it." Her words drifted into the wind, a prayer carried on the morning air. The sun rose higher, flooding Red Mesa with light. The once dead land shimmered silver where the river flowed. Farmers and children waded in the water, laughing, crying, splashing as it spread through the cracked fields. Elias tightened his grip on Naya's hand. Together, they watched the stream wind through the stones, washing away the blood, the smoke, the sorrow. Somewhere in the distance, a desert bird began to sing, the song of a new season. From the ashes of war and flame, they built Red Mesa Springs, a place where water, people, and memory flowed as one. The Apache legend was no longer a whisper on the wind. It was alive, breathing through every drop, every grain of soil. And that morning, as the desert bloomed, everyone understood. Some things can't be killed, because they're born of the earth, and the human spirit that refuses to die. In the land of red dust and wild wind, the story of Elias and Naya didn't end with gunfire. It ended with the sound of running water. Gentle, steady, eternal. Two souls who had lost their faith found it again, not just in each other, but in the promise of rebirth. Red Mesa Springs became more than a place where the water rose. It became proof that love, forgiveness, and resolve are the deepest rivers that run through us all. If this story touched something in you, tell us. Do you believe the land remembers those who walk it? Like, subscribe, and share to keep these Western tales alive. Stories of faith, redemption, and the miracles that still bloom in the dust. See you on the next trail, out where the West still has stories left to tell.